The Santa Monica Mountains, a verdant spine running through the heart of Los Angeles, had always been a place of beauty and tranquility. On January 7, 2025, that serenity was shattered. A spark, ignited by forces unknown, erupted into a raging inferno. Fueled by dry brush and driven by relentless winds, the Palisades fire was born. Flames devoured acres of scrub and chaparral with terrifying speed. The firestorm raged, an unstoppable beast consuming everything in its path. A thick pall of smoke blotted out the sun, casting an eerie orange glow over the city. The air grew heavy with the acrid stench of burning wood and the raw tang of fear. The roar of the fire was deafening, a relentless assault on the senses. It echoed across the canyons, a terrifying symphony of destruction. The heat was intense, radiating outwards in suffocating waves. The Palisades fire, a monstrous entity of nature's wrath, had come to Los Angeles. Panic gripped the city as the firestorm advanced. Sirens wailed, their urgency piercing the smoky haze. Over 100,000 residents, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty, fled their homes. A river of cars snaked through smoke-choked streets, desperate to escape the inferno's grasp. Families huddled together, clutching meager possessions salvaged in haste. The elderly and infirm were helped by neighbors and strangers alike. Pets were bundled into cars, their eyes wide with terror. The exodus was a chaotic ballet of fear and desperation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the flames seemed to burn even brighter, casting a hellish glow across the fleeing masses. The crimson sky wept embers, raining down on the terrified city. The Palisades fire was a relentless pursuer, and Los Angeles was in full retreat. The call went out, a desperate plea for help. Firefighters, those brave souls who ran towards danger when others fled, mobilized with grim determination. Over 7,500 strong, they came from across California and beyond, a brotherhood forged in fire and united against a common enemy. Helicopters roared overhead, their rotors churning the smoky air as they made daring water drops. The Army and Air Force, their resources pressed into service, joined the battle. Bulldozers carved fire breaks, desperate to contain the inferno's advance. The firefighters, their faces blackened with soot, their eyes burning with fatigue and determination, fought with the ferocity of cornered animals. They knew the stakes, homes, lives, and the very soul of their city hung in the balance. The Palisades fire was a formidable foe, but the human spirit, pushed to its limits, refused to yield. Amidst the chaos and destruction, a different kind of heroism unfolded. Wildlife rescue teams, their hearts filled with compassion, ventured into the firestorm's wake, risking their own lives to save creatures great and small. They were beacons of hope in a landscape scarred by fire. Deer, their eyes wide with terror, were gently coaxed from burning underbrush. Birds, their wings singed by the intense heat, were carefully gathered and taken to safety. Lizards, snakes, rabbits, all creatures found sanctuary in the hands of these dedicated individuals. Every life saved, every creature comforted, was a small victory against the overwhelming destruction. In the midst of the inferno, compassion and empathy flickered like embers, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. The firefighters battled with everything they had, but the Palisades fire, fueled by drought and driven by relentless winds, seemed unstoppable. Resources were stretched thin, and fatigue gnawed at the edges of their resolve. The city, it seemed, was on the ropes. Budget cuts, a bitter pill to swallow, had taken their toll on the LAFD. Equipment shortages and a lack of manpower hampered their efforts. Fire trucks, their engines silent, sat idle, awaiting repairs that were slow in coming. The city, it seemed, had been caught unprepared for a disaster of this magnitude. The firefighters, their bodies pushed to the limit, fought on, their determination fueled by a potent cocktail of adrenaline, duty, and a deep-seated love for their city. They knew the stakes were high, that failure was not an option. They were Los Angeles's last line of defense, and they would hold the line, come hell or high water. Fire Chief Kristen Crowley, her face etched with fatigue but her resolve unwavering, became the face of the city's fight against the inferno. Thrust into the crucible of leadership, she confronted the crisis head-on, her voice a steady presence amidst the chaos. She directed resources, made tough decisions, and rallied her troops. She spoke truth to power, publicly criticizing City Hall for inadequate funding and the impact it had on her firefighters' ability to respond effectively. Her honesty, while controversial, resonated with her exhausted crews. Crowley's leadership, forged in the heat of the firestorm, was not without its critics. Some questioned her tactical decisions, while others lauded her courage in speaking out against the systemic issues that had left the city vulnerable. Love her or hate her, there was no denying that Kristen Crowley was the right leader for that moment. The fire raged on, consuming homes and businesses, leaving behind a trail of ash and heartbreak. The firefighters, a thin red line between civilization and chaos, fought with grim determination, their courage tested at every turn. The Palisades fire was a relentless adversary, but they refused to yield. The delayed response times, a consequence of budget cuts and a reliance on external crews, weighed heavily on their minds. Every minute felt like an eternity as they raced against time to save lives and protect property. The fire, it seemed, had exposed the city's vulnerabilities, laying bare the consequences of years of neglect. Despite the exhaustion, the fear, and the frustration, the firefighters never gave up. They drew strength from each other, from the camaraderie that bound them together. They were brothers and sisters, united in their common purpose. The Palisades fire may have tested their limits, but it could not break their spirit. As days turned into weeks, the Palisades fire finally began to relinquish its grip on the city. The relentless efforts of the firefighters, aided by a shift in the wind and the arrival of much-needed rain, finally turned the tide. The inferno was subdued, leaving behind a landscape scarred by its fury. The air, thick with smoke for so long, slowly began to clear, revealing the devastation wrought by the firestorm. Homes lay in ruins, their charred skeletons stark reminders of the inferno's power. The once vibrant hillsides were now blackened and bare, stripped of their verdant beauty. The human cost of the fire was immeasurable. Lives were lost, families were torn apart, and a city was left reeling in the wake of the disaster. The Palisades fire was a stark reminder of the power of nature and the fragility of human life. In the aftermath of the Palisades fire, Los Angeles began the long and arduous process of rebuilding. The physical scars would heal in time, but the emotional toll would linger, a constant reminder of the firestorm's fury. The city, however, refused to be defined by this tragedy. The fire had exposed systemic issues within the LAFD, igniting a fierce debate about funding, resources, and the city's preparedness for future disasters. The controversy surrounding Fire Chief Crowley's leadership, while divisive, ultimately served as a catalyst for change. The Palisades fire was a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the growing threat of wildfires in a world grappling with climate change. It was a tragedy, yes, but also an opportunity for reflection, for growth, and for a renewed commitment to protecting the city and its people from the ever-present danger of wildfire.